Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to this presentation about effective purchasing. My name is Finbarr Crispie. I'm a 971 mentor. I've been on the team since 2009 when my sons joined the team, and now I help mentor with leadership and organization.
I'm Schuh, the lead mentor on Team 971, and I've been with the team since my oldest started in 2004, so I've been here a while.
I'm Brian Silverman. I started as a student on 971 in 2011, and I was a student for 4 years, and now I've been a mentor for 5 years. And I helped start a lot of the purchasing stuff.
So the topics we're going to cover today are benefits of a good purchasing system, the history behind our purchasing system. We'll go through some of the steps that we take, and then our accounting system. And finally, Brian is going to finish up and talk about model-based purchasing.
So, it's a little introduction.
I'm sure I was going to take this part, right?
I'm taking
a
a little introduction. As they say, the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. And the 971 purchasing system has been evolved over the last 10 years to meet the needs of our team. It's a hope that you might leave here with a few tips. Not everything may be applicable, but maybe you can have some tips to help you make your team run a little smoother. Some of the forms that we have, I've made blank copies, and they're linked to on our website, and we'll have a link at the end that you can write down to find them. But if you can copy those and use them for your own benefits and modify them. So every FRC team operates a little bit differently. So as I said, ours is technically a school club, so that dictates the way our money comes in. We're not a class, or we're not a nonprofit or anything like that. We come in through the school. For vendors big vendors like McMaster, we'll get a PO, and the bookkeeper will pay the bills, and the rest we get reimbursements. So some of this thing won't work for other teams, but the tracking and purchasing system that we've used, you may be able to use some of the things.
Okay, so why do I need a purchasing system? Well, the main reason is so that you don't look like this guy at the end of the year, tearing your hair out. The first reason is basically for ease of ordering parts. We've fine-tuned our ordering system over the years so that responsible students and mentors can put them on the purchase list to be ordered. Once the students and mentors are trained to put the proper information on the form, purchasing becomes a lot easier. Sometimes even new students can help with this, because it becomes apparent that when they're working with another student or a mentor on something that needs to be ordered, they can just add it to the list. They look through the McMaster catalog usually, or some other site with an experienced person to find the part they need, and they put it on the purchase list. One caveat though, and this is something that Win has found over the years, is that language is very, very important. Just because something is put on the purchase list does not mean it actually has been ordered. Oftentimes the student would come up and say, oh yeah, I ordered something, and we'd find out later that, well,
No,
it was put on the list, but it wasn't actually ordered yet.
Actually, they would say, I bought that.
Yes.
And it's like, you did not buy that because I did not place the order.
Yeah.
So,
The first step is getting it on a purchase list. The second reason why we need a purchasing system is so we can track orders and have accountability in receiving. Once the system is used properly, it allows us to easily track the status of orders and who has received them at the lab. Next, it allows us to track reimbursements, who should get reimbursed for orders. Most of the orders, as Win will point out, are basically bought on a credit card for she holds, but other people do buy things sometimes, and we need to figure out how to get them reimbursed. It also answers questions about, where did I order this certain widget and when. Sometimes we want to go back and look at a particular item and find out, well, when did we order it, what did we order, what was the part number, and because it's all maintained on Google Docs, we have that history and that traceability. Since everything is on a Google Drive, different parts of the purchasing can be done by different people. Win does the ordering, and a lot of the categorizing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But there is an adult who helps turn in reimbursements and another adult who helps balances the books periodically. So multiple people could actually help with the categorizing. And by this, what we mean is assigning items to certain budget buckets so that at the end of the year, we know how much we spent on the robot, we know how much we spent on stock, etc. And the last reason is sustainability. And the system we're going to describe, as I said, is based heavily on Google Sheets. And you may ask, oh, why not use a commercially available product like QuickBooks? Well, we tried that 1 year, but what we found was that because you've got to pay for the license, that QuickBooks license resides on somebody's computer, and only that person then can look at the accounts. And it's very difficult for other people to see what's happening and to have that transparency of how much money we have, how much money we're spending. So we transferred it to a Google Sheets system, and this is one reason one thing I can't stress enough is that whenever you set up a system on your team, you have to make sure that it's sustainable. And by that, what I mean is that if that person decides to leave the team, the system has to be simple enough and transparent enough that anybody else can pick it up. And that wasn't the case with QuickBooks, but with these Google Sheets, what we're finding is that it is simple enough for other people to quickly pick it up.
Okay, going to go over a brief history of 971 purchasing. This has taken us a while to get here. Having been with the team for a long time, I happen to be a firm believer in maintaining team lore and history. I've been around long enough to know most of it, and I have tried to record it because the team that you see today is not the team that we were 10 years ago. We've come a long way, and we've learned a lot of things. And if we can help by showing some of our journey, help other teams get there a little faster, that's good. So 2009 and before, I call it prehistoric times. The origins of our purchasing system are just a bit fuzzy. I distinctly remember sitting down during the 2009 season with a student and saying, I have a credit card and I know how to use it. And we ordered all of the parts for the robot in one sitting. I find it hard to believe that we did that, but those were simpler times. But since there are no records of any of our ordering in 2009 or before, I just have to assume that whatever it was fairly disorganized. In 2010 and 11, we started a rudimentary tracking system. So we made a purchase list. Google Drive is great. I found all these things on the drive. We made a purchase list, and it was all entered manually, had part numbers and things, so presumably we had enough information to place an order from that. So we did that for 2 years. And also at that time, when I ordered something, I would highlight the line in the purchase list in the same color for every item in that order so that I knew that I had ordered it. It's funny because now we have order numbers and all these other tracking things, but I find I still color all the lines because there's something very satisfactory about seeing a spreadsheet that's all colored in. That means we got everything colored. In 2011, I noticed that we ordered a received by column. It's my recollection that this probably came from the fact that there was one momentous occasion when I had an order at my house. I sent it over with a student. It had 3 items in it. When I got over to the lab an hour later, one item was missing, and never to be found again, and the other 2 items were in totally different rooms. So now when an order is opened and received, somebody puts their initials on it, so at least we know who opened the box, and maybe we can find it. In 2013, 2012, this was the dawn of the purchase order form. So we started a Google form that people could go to, put in the item numbers, and it would all be stored in this purchasing list so that then we could place the orders and then find the information later. So we had a reimbursement log at the time, but that was mostly to make sure that I perhaps got reimbursed for everything by the end of the year. So 2013 marked a, what I call here, the beginning of the modern era. So in 2012, usually these things came about because something went terribly wrong. Okay, so 2012, at the end of the season, we placed an order, and I lost track of it. And we figured out, like the week before bag, that this gear, special gear that had a long lead time, had never been ordered. The best we could figure is it got put in the cart, and then nobody pushed the purchase button. So in 2013, we started to have things like order numbers. We put, track which things had been ordered. We used a piece of software, online site called Package Tracker, so that then once the tracking information came in, we put it into there so that then we could see tracking. I think we started the 971 purchasing email list so that everybody got information about this stuff, so that hopefully we wouldn't lose orders again. So in 2014, we had automation started. And this is, in 2013, Brian was a junior, and he was helping with purchasing that year. And there is nothing like having a programmer help with purchasing, because suddenly all of the tedious things about purchasing got scripted, and there were automatic scripting things to help with the ordering. So we could cut and paste into McMaster and things like that. So that was a huge, huge thing. In 2015, we figured out that we could make a budget at the beginning of the year, turn it into the bookkeeper, and then not have to vote on every reimbursement that we had. So that was a big deal. So we started doing budgeting, and we also tried to do the we also tried to do the QuickBook thing, and we decided that didn't work, because we'd been in a meeting, and the person that was entering everything into QuickBooks would send us a PDF of the budget line, and somebody would say, well, where did that number come from? We couldn't look at it because it was on her computer. So when we started doing accounting in 2016, we put it into the Google Docs so that everybody could see it and access it and see our accounting there. And then in 2017 was the beginning of our model-based purchasing. Prior to that point, in order to purchase all of the things for a robot, they would bring up the CAD, and they'd like hide parts of it, and then count all the motors and count all the bearings and things. And that was how we did the robot purchasing. And so Brian came up with a system that made that a little bit more automated. I'm next. Okay. Yeah, just a minute. Let me. Somehow I got out of order. So ordering. Thank you. So I'm going to go through the steps that we go through when we're ordering parts, and then at the end, I'm actually going to pull up the files and kind of walk you through placing an order. The first thing is the ordering. This places the order on the item on the purchase list, and as I said, it allows us to delegate the actual purchasing. The form lets us have multiple people put items on the thing, and then there's oversight involved, because a lot of times it'll be done with a more experienced student or with a mentor, and then for the more expensive things or the more specialized things, we have a system for getting them approved, and sometimes I just email somebody and find out, is this really the part that we needed? So, and this year we added to it, I had we'll see later, I had a column or a question of, when do you need this by? And I determined this year that ASAP was really not a very useful designator. Because does ASAP mean in 2 days for this weekend, and I'm gonna have to do expedited shipping, which is probably not gonna happen? Or does ASAP mean ordered as soon as possible so that we have it next week for the meeting? So I put in a date for that. Also, we have the scripting, and I'll walk through the scripting. We have it so that you can specify a vendor and then find out all the unordered parts for a given vendor. Order tracking. So then what we do is we take a purchase, we put a purchase number for every item, and that links to an accounting log so that then we can track all of the orders and everything like that. And then package tracking, I'll show you the website that we use. It's actually pretty useful. I have no idea how they make money, but
Ads.
ads, I don't even notice the ads. And then receiving, we have a deal where whenever an order comes in, we have students or whoever are supposed to mark off that they received every order and that put in the accounting log that the whole order came in, so that then we can see which orders have come in and which ones haven't. And then we also, the last few years, we have one student who's in charge of receiving, and they can have other people help them check things in, but I wanted one person who wasn't me, because before that it was always me, who had like touched every order or had been involved in every order, so that then when we came in and somebody wanted to know where that order was, they would have at least seen it. And we'll talk about kitting later. For the robot parts, we have a system for putting things in kit so that they can find them. So package tracking, receiving. Okay, so now I'm going to walk through placing an order. So here's our purchase list. So this is kind of what it looks like. There's the date. It's just a spreadsheet from a Google form. And then what we'll do is we have our purchase list. And these items, files are all available through our website. So there'll be a contact number, a contact name, a part name. The more information, the better. So if there's a color or something choice, have that in there. This is a McMaster part, so there's a part number, but if there's a link to a part, that's good. Quantity, units, cost per unit, and all this information is, so when I go to the website and I start to order it, I look at it and I go, okay, which part is make sure that it was actually $11.28 to make sure that we had the right thing in there. The number of these items that are in the CA, which I don't know that we use this one that much, but the information's in there. We do?
That's how we generate the cost accounting worksheet at the end.
Oh,
Look at
okay.
all the
See, I
summers for all
don't do
parts.
that, so. And then kit identifiers, which on Brian's stuff, all the CAD has kit identifiers. And then the source, so we have, these are the ones we use the most. I see I need to take OSH off there. And then category, so there's a category for everything. So people pick what category it goes into, robot, anything that goes on the robot. And this will include, it's not just the cost of what we put on the robot, because sometimes we'll change things out, and but anything that was supposed to go on the robot. And then things like consumables, that's our stock, our screws, all that kind of stuff. And then the needed by, what?
Paper towels.
Paper towels, that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, paper plates, that kind of stuff. And then any comments. So now we'll submit that. It will show up. It should show up. It showed up in our purchase list there. So now you'll see we have a tab, and these are all filters. So these other tabs, you never type anything in or it breaks the filter. So that purchase list is the only one that you type in. So those are all the ones that are not ordered. So now we want to do a script. Purchase list, generate list to order. So we put in McMaster. Okay. So we go to the script output. So all of the McMaster parts show up there. Now we highlight that, because maybe we didn't want to order them all this time. Numbers and quantities. So now this is a list for any of you that's shopped on McMaster. This is a list you can cut and paste into the McMaster, and it'll put all of them into the cart at once, which is pretty cool. So now we would go in, we would assign it an order number. This one is, I'm just doing it. Usually I do the year. This is like an old spreadsheet. Put it in all the ones that we've ordered. Presumably I've ordered all these. Now we go back to the script output, and there's nothing in there. And there's nothing in the not ordered spreadsheet. And you can also do, like with the scripts, I love this stuff. Which order? And in the script. So you can see all the parts that were in that order. Sometimes that's useful to be able to go back and look at that. Okay, so, and then once we've ordered it, we have this package tracker. So I ordered something from McMaster this week, and you can see it was delivered on Friday morning at 9:25 in the morning. So we can track where they are, and it'll send you updates and things. And this is all I've got. It's this stuff on our website too.
It'll also send you emails when anything happens
Yes.
with the package, which when you order from lots of different places, some of them send you email updates for some things and some of them don't.
Yeah.
Having it all in one place is really nice, because then like they decided they couldn't deliver the package today, and it just sends you an email instead of you having to go check that it's now complicated, stuff like that.
Right. So that's been huge to be able to track them all in one place. So I've put, and you might want to take a picture or write this down. I've put everything, all of this information and these files on our website, frc971.org, ordering procedures. If you just put in purchasing or ordering in the search, you can find it that way also.
Excuse me, is that spreadsheet also there?
Yes, the spreadsheet. I've got links to blank ones, actually to those actual ones that you need to make a copy, and then you can use it for your own use. And for anyone, I don't know, that have used Google Forms a lot or haven't, if you copy like going from year to year, if you copy over the spreadsheet, it will automatically generate a new form to go with that spreadsheet, and that way you get to keep all of the extra tabs and scripts and stuff like that. And it will, when you use the scripts for the first time, it'll tell you that this is a dangerous program and that it's unverified, but just say it's okay. And occasionally you have to go in and the scripts and save them. I don't know why that happens, because it'll stop, the strike-through stops working. But anyway.
To put it into perspective, like how many orders would you place a season or?
Hundreds? Oh, so she wanted to know how many orders we place in a season. I would have to look, I can tell you that at the end, but it's like,
It's a lot.
it's a lot. Like
I think we got up to a couple
1,000?
hundred.
a couple hundred?
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I'm a
So,
rookie.
yeah, and we're talking about all sorts of things. Screws, we're talking about, yeah, all sorts of things.
Wow, okay, I didn't realize a couple
Yeah.
hundred.
Oops. Okay, so once everything is purchased, it's tracked in an accounting log, and I will open this up so we can take a look at it.
This
This
is
is
the
the
spreadsheet we use
to
track
track
what's been
what's been
purchased,
purchased,
what
what
category it's been
category it's
assigned
been
to,
assigned to,
and
and how that
matches to our
matches
budget.
to our budget.
So
So
on the left
you
you can see the order numbers,
numbers,
total cost
total
of
cost of
the
the
order,
order,
when it was
when it was
ordered,
ordered,
basically how it was paid for, the
the
vendor,
vendor,
who received it.
received it.
I'll get to the
I'll get to the
reimbursement in a
reimbursement in a second.
We just
We
scroll
just
across and you can see this is
this is
the part
the
where
part where
basically it's assigned to a
category.
category. And we do
And
this
we
so
do
we can
this so we can
track
track
things
things
in
in
our
our
budget.
budget.
We have
We have
about
about
10
10
different categories,
I would say,
in our budget,
and we just
put all
put
the
all
orders
the
into
orders
one
into one
category
category
or
or
another, so we
another,
can
so we can
track how much
track
we're
how much
spending.
we're spending.
And generally for any one order, it tends to be one category. You know, it'll be robot parts, or it'll be tools. And,
except for
McMaster, because we buy all sorts of things from McMaster, so that one tends to have different categories. And I actually made a tab for divvying that out into the different categories.
We have a
We have
tab
a tab
called
called
income statement,
where we have our budget on the left.
Those are
Those are fixed amounts for the year.
and the actual amount. So once
a number is put into the purchase order log on the tab I just showed you,
it will
it will automatically show up
on this page here, on this tab,
added to the total for the category.
And there's an income tab too for all of our income we get from sponsors.
So what we do, this is shared with the leadership, and our treasurer, for each leadership meeting, basically makes a PDF of this page, and then shares it at the leadership meeting, and we go through it, and just basically to show people how much we're spending, get an idea of how we did compared to the previous year, and generally we use it as a tool for transparency, but as well for education, to educate the kids about budget, about tracking a budget, now about keeping within a budget.
So do the adults do all the accounting, but a student is a treasurer? Is that?
So this is, she
Yeah.
asked if there's, the adults do the accounting and the students the treasurer. Well, so what happens is, because we're a school club, we have to have a treasurer that's a student, because we're a student club. And so in order to turn the reimbursements in, it has to be signed by an adult and a student. And that's just the way the process works. So the very minimum our treasurer needs to do is to respond to emails in a timely fashion and take sign the reimbursements and take them in. Where they can do as much as they're willing to do, but I have, there's an adult who's helped me for many years who will take, since I use one credit card and I'm willing to float some credit, on it, she'll take the monthly statement and attach all the receipts to it and then bring it in. We've had students that helped with that. We've had students that did the categorizing. It's kind of whatever they're up for, but the minimum is we have to have a treasurer that will interface with the school on the team budget, so.
I think it also depends on how your school handles it. We're in the same district and they have a big thing about they don't want parents buying anything, so it runs all through the adults, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're, and Los Altos is a class and we're a club and it's just all, it just
Well,
depends on your
and like
situation.
For us, money is in two different places. Money's in the district office.
Yes.
And money's in the club account, and there's
Yeah.
different requirements. So I think you have to find out how your school works for being reimbursed. I would agree with Wynn though, a good way to do it is to keep it all in one credit card and have it go through one person. If you don't mind the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000
Yeah.
that is on the credit card, and then you just stay on
Yeah.
top of it.
And then having somebody help me meant that she actually does it once a month instead of I'm scrambling at the end of the year in May to make sure before the bookkeeper goes home actually it has to be approved by the student council, so before they have their last meeting so that I can get reimbursed before the summer. So we do it now on a.
And it also helps with reimbursements, because there's fewer people who have to be reimbursed, as opposed to 20, you're talking about maybe primarily one, and maybe a few others who've bought some small things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's primarily going on the one credit card, so it's easier to process reimbursements. The spreadsheet I just showed you allows us to generate a reimbursement list of basically who needs to be reimbursing for how much, and then that's what gets turned into the bookkeeper. And it allows us to track. Once the reimbursement has been placed, it goes into that log, so we can tell, okay, this reimbursement request has gone in. So again, the system allows us to track all that. Okay? All right, now model-based purchasing.
Also, to answer the earlier question, I just went and looked it up. We made 228 orders last year.
Okay.
So model-based purchasing. This is a thing that we've been kind of working on as a further step toward automating this and making it all go faster and have less mistakes. Basic idea is SolidWorks can export a list of all the parts in an assembly in a spreadsheet. If this model is your whole robot, then you can get a list of all the parts in your robot. You can also include custom properties indicating exactly what needs to be ordered, which we'll get into what those are in a minute. However, kind of a word of warning is this is really hard to actually make it work correctly. SolidWorks doesn't like to export spreadsheets that are in a particularly usable form. It likes to put, new lines and spaces in the middle of things and like put stuff in different columns sometimes. And also, when you have a whole bunch of parts in a robot, someone will copy a part and then not update the information. So now you have a part with the wrong information, but it looks like it's right. And so filtering all of those out is hard to do when you go to actually order everything. And we've been trying this for a couple years now, but every year so far we've had to edit the tools on the fly. So it's not terribly stable yet, but it's kind of ideas for things you can do. And we do have some scripts that we could share, but they're not very done. As an example of what you get out of SolidWorks, this image down at the bottom here is actually the first part of the BOM for, I believe, the 2019 robot. So that first column there is item number. SolidWorks automatically generates that. It's a hierarchical thing of nested subassemblies, each get their own number. So the top level assembly is 1, and then there's a couple of subassemblies in there that are 1.1 and 1.1.1, and then you keep adding 1s until eventually you get to wheel tensioner is the second part in the drivetrain side rail assembly. So that's 1.1.1.1.2. And then wheel tensioner is itself an assembly, so it has a subpart in there, 1.1.1.2.1. And then it kind of keeps going like that. So that item number is the key to understanding what the structure of the robot is, but it's not a particularly easy format to read. It's also a pretty annoying format to work with if you're writing scripts to deal with this stuff. That next column is part number. That's a 971 custom property that we add to all of our parts and assemblies. We assign each part and assembly a number, which is helpful for tracking it. That goes on drawings. When we have sponsors make parts, they always want to have a part number to refer to the part by because their systems are all based around numbers. It's also pretty helpful for us to be able to easily refer to an assembly. Versus when you get two things both called side rail, it's really nice to have different numbers for them so you have some hope of figuring out which one's which. There's also that part name, another custom property. That people fill it in. Typically that same name will also show up in the file name for it, but not always. As you can see from those file names over on the right, I believe all of these parts are just the number and then the name. Sometimes that doesn't quite work, so the name is helpful for human readability, even if you don't want to have to rename the file necessarily. There's also vendor part number and vendor, which all of these parts are custom parts that we make, so they have nothing there. But we can also fill out, this is a McMaster part, and then put a part number in there, which means when you're ordering stuff, you can just automatically fill out, it's this McMaster part, and that can make stuff easier. Those next things over there are spares number and spares percent. We've tried to track how many spare parts we should order through this. That system is really not done, so I'm not going to talk about that much. Next column over there is multiplier. So multiplier is, say you have a bolt, and the bolt comes in a pack of 25. You put the McMaster car part number in there, and then the multiplier would be 1/25. So that way when we're ordering it, we know that even if there's 20 of them on the robot that we need, you actually only need to order one of the things from McMaster. And that last column is quantity. SolidWorks adds that. That says how many of that part there is in the assembly. Or how many instances of the subassembly are in the higher level assembly. There we go. Yeah. That's exactly what I just said. Next part of the model-based purchasing process is called the BOM Output Spreadsheet, which is have some code that takes that SolidWorks BOM and translates it into something that's actually useful for doing further things with. Basically, the SolidWorks BOM is kind of built around the structure of the model, versus the BOM outputs is built around each part and subassembly saying how many of them there are and what its part number is and all that kind of stuff. This is what all the rest of the scripts end up looking at. Over here we have an example of that from that same robot. For example, the main robot assembly, which that's the whole robot. If we go look back at the previous thing, that has one spare indicated because we want to make 2 robots. So that has, that's the first line over there, and that has total quantity of 2. And that next column over is kit quantities, which I will talk about kits in a minute. And then the final thing is quantity per robot, which is what ends up on the cost accounting worksheet when we're done. What goes in that form of the purchasing list, that field of the purchasing list form that we were talking about earlier. A more interesting example here than most of those is down in row 9. There's a bearing. And that bearing is from West Coast Products or VexPro, and it has a part number in there. So when we go and import this into the purchasing list form, we can automatically bring over that part number, which can make it a lot less work to fill that out. You can also see there are 23 of those per robot, and we end up wanting to have 63 total, including spares of both whole robots and also spares of various subassemblies. And the idea of this is it automatically takes all that into account. Actually getting these spares calculated accurately is kind of a work in progress because it's kind of hard to define that clearly. So we end up custom fudging that basically every time. Talk about kitting. This is a more interesting part of the process, which I think has worked really well for us and would probably be helpful for other teams too. In the past, we've had the problem where someone goes, we need some of these bearings for the robots. Someone goes and finds 3 of them. Says, yay, we have all we need for the drivetrain. We don't need to order anymore. And the week after that, they need to find the same bearings for the arm. So they go find bearings. They find the same 3 bearings, and they go, look, we have all of them. We don't need to order anymore. And then you're trying to put a robot together, and you have a problem. So, also playing into this is when you go to put together, I have a drivetrain I want to put together. If you have all the parts in a box, it saves a whole bunch of time, which helps a lot with streamlining the assembly process so you can get the robot put together and maybe actually turn it on before it goes in the bag. The basic approach we take to this is we grab a box and label it, and then all the parts for one assembly get put in that box. Often we'll use the big plastic totes that the kit of parts comes in. We use one of those for a whole assembly, and then some smaller parts organizers bins like we have a picture of down there for organizing individual, smaller parts like little bolts and nuts and fasteners and stuff. We label that bin with the assembly number so that everyone knows which assembly that's referring to, and then everything for that assembly and all sub-assemblies goes in that box unless the sub-assembly is a separate kit that gets split out separately. And deciding which things make sense to keep together as a kit is kind of driven by what's going to get assembled at the same time. And I looked for better pictures of what this looks like, but it turns out boxes full of parts aren't that interesting to take pictures of, so I don't really have any. Basically, when we're in the middle of build season, doing purchasing and making parts and assembling stuff, we just have these boxes out on the tables, and everyone knows that's where the stuff goes.
I also recommend using bags to put things in, so 30 loose bearings in the bottom of the box is much less useful than a bag of all the bearings together, so.
Yeah. And getting everybody on the same page about everything goes in that box.
Yeah, and stays in the box, that's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Once you've found the parts and decided you don't need to order them, they go in the box. when you finish making some parts on the lathe or with sheet metal tools or whatever, you put them in the box. And you get the parts from a sponsor, they go in the box. When you take some of the parts out and then you realize you aren't actually going to put those together right now because it's time to go home because it's midnight, they go back in the box. When you take the parts out of the box and put together one arm and then you have the parts for 3 more, those go back in the box. And also all the spares that we've assembled for stuff, because you get bearings and someone goes and gets metal chips in one of the bearings and it doesn't work anymore. It's nice to have the spares in the same place, so those also go in the box. And also when you're going to the competition and you're like, great, we need spare parts, where do we find the spares? If they're still in the boxes, then it's a lot easier to find them than if they've migrated to all 4 corners of the lab.
We've tried that, it doesn't work very well.
It's like parts naturally kind of want to get distributed across the entire space, so if you try and put them back in the box, it helps a lot. And just having boxes that are labeled and telling everybody stuff goes in the box, it's really simple and it goes surprisingly far in not losing things.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
Yes.
Can you talk about the order numbers that you manually put in to the spreadsheet when you're placing an order? It looked like what you were doing was just the date. If you're ordering from like Ms. McMaster and Andy Mark on the same day, can you talk about what that
Well,
ends up-
So
Oh.
those are not actually
Let's repeat the
dates.
question.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. It's asking about order numbers.
yes.
And it turns out those aren't actually dates, they're just the year and then a number that increases for every order.
Okay. I
So the
misread that.
accounting log that I copied over happened to be 2019, so I started with the 2019. This year they'll all be 2020, and then I just go to the next line in the accounting log, take that number, and put in McMaster and use that number, so. That was the
Repeat the
box.
question.
Oh, he wanted to know about kits. That was the box.
Yeah, we call those kits. For each assembly is its own kit, which is kind of, you'll often have, these 10 assemblies are sub-assemblies of this main one. Those all go in the same kit, but then everything, this, sub-assembly 3 levels down, this one is its own kit. So now that's a whole nother tree of SolidWorks parts and assemblies that go in a different box.
So for a rookie to put into perspective, how many kits would you have a season?
How many kits will we have?
It depends a lot on the robot. Drivetrain will typically be its own kit. Let's see, last year, like the whole suction cup assembly on the arm was its own kit. The intake that popped out and got the ball is a kit. The elevator that the grabber bit rides on is a kit. And then I think that was the whole robot.
So 4 or 5 or something?
Yeah.
So it's mostly by function, and then if a kit gets too big, sometimes they'll split them into subsections and things. So it's not a lot, it's just, yeah.
And kind of the main thing is thinking about what will get assembled together. Like you put a drivetrain together and now you can drive it. You put a suction cup together and now you can go suck on things with it.
You can test it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Test it.
I need something else.
Yeah, and like the intake, you put that together and now you can go, make sure it moves, make sure it actually works, kind of, before you get it on the robot.
And then one thing that Brian didn't mention is that once we've gotten this bill of materials, ordering things, we'll have students or someone go and kind of shop in our lab. And they'll go, so we'll end up as one of our vendors is in-house. So we'll know that when they go back to the list that, there were 10 bearings in-house and that we won't order those. We used to, it's just easier for somebody to not go look and just put them on the purchase list. So we ended up with lots of extras and things. So we try to go kind of shop in the lab and buy stuff. Takes a little practice though to get people to go and actually look for stuff in the lab. So.
Any other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned receiving and having someone write their name. Does that go in any of your spreadsheets?
Yes,
The
it
receiving,
goes,
yeah, you asked about receiving end, does the name
Oh,
go
I
in the
forgot
spreadsheet?
that.
So,
I forgot to put that in there. Keep going, it's way out there. There it
yeah,
is.
there it is.
So what we'll have is, so let's say we have a McMaster order that has 100 things in it, which it's a little big, but not too far out of the realm of possibility if you're ordering lots of screws and rivets and all that sort of stuff. So we'll sit down with the things, and we might have 2 or 3 students going through and checking all of the things and make sure we got all of the parts. And each one will put their initial and the date in that column, because they touched that. And then, this is a slightly difficult concept, is once they've got them all ordered, we go to the accounting log and put down that the entire order was received. And that might be the student that is in charge of receiving.
One of the big reasons to separate those is some vendors will send you one order in 5 different boxes that show up on 5 different days. So if you mark down in the purchase list when each part has arrived, then you can make sure they actually showed up and RC didn't miss some parts in the box.
Yeah. Yes. So just a word of information. I love West Coast products and I love RC, but I don't tend to back order stuff from them because it's very hard to keep track of what you actually got and what you didn't get. It can be. I think they're getting better every year, but sometimes things will come in partial orders because they back ordered. Most companies don't do that. If they don't have it, they don't send it to you. But like McMaster's, I've had ones where they'll send stuff out from Chicago, and it comes from on a different day than the other one. So that way you can determine if each part's come in or if the whole orders come in. And then we actually have, and this doesn't always get updated, but we actually have status, like if we read some of it or we received all of it, or if somebody went to the store and bought it, they'll put that in there so that we can kind of tell where things are.
Occasionally you have an order that just gets stuck, and it's nice to realize that before it's time to bag up the robot, you don't have the part.
But on the other hand, I have found, first of all, it's only as helpful as the information you put into the spreadsheet. So if you don't keep it up to date, it's less useful. And you can still lose things if you forget to check the orders. Just have somebody check them periodically and say, oh, well, this one said it shipped, but it shipped a week ago. Did something happen to it? Or this one, the one that always gets me is you just assume they're going to ship it in a few days, and all of a sudden you realize it's been a week and they haven't shipped it, and it's like, okay, do we need to make phone calls here or what? So you do need to look at it and make sure that this stuff is getting processed and coming through. Because there's nothing, that year that we didn't get the gear ordered, I think sponsor did a 3D printed gears just so that we could put the robot together, and then swapped it out at the competition because we didn't get the gear. It had a 2-week lead time and we didn't get the gear in time. So it's good to keep on top of that to make sure that stuff gets ordered and gets shipped and all that kind of stuff. Most of the companies that work for, that people order typically for FRC are on it. I mean, and they ship them out. Well, okay, maybe not ours. Well,
I'm thinking Andy Mark, not.
well, yeah. VexPro will get them out the same day, stuff like that. West Coast Products, if they have it in stock, will get it out. If you get it in before noon, they'll be here the next day. McMaster, if you haven't already discovered McMaster, okay. You'll receive it the next day or so. Anyway, other question?
As a closing advice to anyone who hasn't done this before, when the boxes show up, get everyone on the same page. Stuff stays in the box until it's been put away. It doesn't move to a different table without being put away.
Yeah. So,
Students and mentors both.
yeah. So if you get tools in, give it to the person who ordered the tools, or, yeah. Because we've lost orders, never to be found again. Yeah, it happens.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Hi, I'm Ed. I'm a mentor on Team 971. We hope you enjoyed this video. For more videos and resources, please subscribe and visit our website at frc971.org.